shooting syllabus, nothing. I just get a chance to talk to you about what's on my mind and take your questions, things that are on your mind. So welcome to my home, and here we go. I've been thinking about something. I think about this every year. Every year that I have been alive, and I have been aware of issues people raise. I guess I wasn't aware of this when I was 7. But pretty much all of my life, I have read and I have heard the usual about consumerism and Christmas. That people have made a religious holiday into a capitalist holiday. It's great for businesses, but it ruins the spirit of the holiday. It's just a bunch of quote-unquote consumerism. People are spending all this money on gifts, and the critique has been the same my whole life. And I never for 4 minutes, I never for 1 minute thought it was persuasive. There is something wrong. I have to say this. I don't mean to insult anybody, but I acknowledge it's an insult, all right? I don't mean it to be an insult, but it is an insult. There's something wrong with you if you think there is something wrong in buying people gifts. It drives me crazy. Do you understand what people are protesting? People are buying too many presents for other people. That is disgusting. What kind of brain comes up with that? And I have an answer. The well-educated brain. You have to go to college to think up something that stupid. And I mean it literally. You would never have thought that in high school. You have to be taught something like that. People are going out and thinking, gee, what would Aunt Jenny like? That's disgusting, isn't it? I mean, think about how awful that is, that you might be thinking that way, that grandparents are thinking, what would really make my grandchild happy? Can you think of anything more awful? My God, it's the epitome of capitalist selfishness. I'm of course being sarcastic, but that's what they're saying. When you understand what is involved, how could you possibly be opposed to it? People are spending their money to try to make people in their lives, friends and relatives, happy with a gift. So I have asked all these years that I have broadcast, and almost every year I have broadcast one of my hours prior to Christmas. I have asked people, so what is your ideal? That people not buy anything for anybody? What is your ideal? What is better? This is a classic example of people who are not grateful for the present, and they make up some image of some future glorious vision, which is preposterous. Why is that even glorious? Yes, we are a much better society than they used to be. Oh, in America, they used to buy, could you believe it? They used to buy people presents for Christmas. But now we don't. We are a better people for it. That's what people must imagine. This is what we have come to, where it's like the miserable and the cheap are dictating the narrative of our time. Because you have to be slightly unhappy and slightly cheap to think that it's a beautiful thing not to get people gifts. Then there's the religious one. This is not what Jesus had in mind. Now, I admit I'm a Jew. I'm not a Christian. I admit it. Not admit it. I mean, it's just a fact. But so you may say, who are you to comment on another religion? The only answer I have to that is I'm very pro-Christian, as Christians know. So this comes from a good place. So while it is not possible to know if I really directed the question, if one directed the question to Jesus, what the answer would be, it's hard for me to believe that he would think it's ugly that people buy gifts on his birthday. How would you feel if people bought gifts to honor your birthday? I think you'd feel pretty good about it, right? I mean, let's Let's just imagine for a moment that religion has common sense. I've often said about religious people, and I am a religious person, I've often said that the most heretical belief that I have is God has common sense. Because so many religious people, they make this picture of God that has no common sense. Just substitute you for a moment for God or for Jesus if you're a Christian and say, what would honor me on my birthday? If people bought presents for others, people that they love, or if people did not buy presents for people that they love? Which would be a greater honor for my birthday? So the religious question is absurd. And I'll give it from my own religion. In a Hanukkah without gifts, what would the kids do? The kids would go out of their minds. You think they're going to get high just on lighting candles? This notion that, we have to just convey the deep religious essence of the holiday. Of course you have to convey the deep religious essence of the holiday. But why does getting gifts knock it out? Maybe it makes it fun. And making religion fun for children is a great way to keep them religious. Woe unto the religious home that does not bring laughter and smiles to its children. What do you think I looked forward to as a kid for Hanukkah? Lighting candles? Not quite. It was not a big thrill. All right, it is today because I know what it's about and I love doing it, etc. But I'm not a kid. When I was a kid, getting the gift, what will my parents get me for Hanukkah, was the only question I asked. Not what color candles will we be lighting. It never crossed my mind. All I cared about was what will the gift be. As I got older, I understood the profound meaning of Hanukkah. It saved monotheism. I mean, it's a pretty big deal, but that's not what moved me when I was 11, let alone 6. But it brought me great joy. My grandparents got me gifts. My parents got me gifts. It was great. What's wrong with that? So that's so much with the religious argument. Let's see. There's the capitalist and big business argument. There's the religious argument. I think there was a third argument that people give against it, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, those are the two big ones. Can you think of any? That's pretty much it, right? I mean, that's what people will raise.
Obsessed with opting outside.
Opting outside?
To be in nature. That's
to be in nature?
Yeah.
You mean, and they're not giving, well, you can give gifts outside.
Like on Black Friday.
I see.
Go outside instead of give gifts.
Okay, that's a little too over my head. I think that those pretty much cover what people say. Oh, yes, I know this is not an objection, but this is one of my favorite lines. You know what I don't like? I have a real distaste for make-believe in the sense that I think adults should live in reality. We should address reality for what it is. People live it's like socialism is beautiful and capitalism is ugly. It's based on non-reality. In reality, only capitalism has ever gotten people out of poverty. Only. All right? Socialism spends the money that capitalism creates. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. So here's another example. It's the thought that counts when people talk about presents. And you know what? That's sometimes true. And sometimes, most of the time, it's not true. Let's be honest. If somebody gave you $1 for Hanukkah or Christmas, and I doubt that you would say, well, it's the thought that counts. It might be if the dollar were given by an impoverished relative. And I'm not being cute. I could understand that then. But generally speaking, it's not true. I remember... I've learned a lot. When you talk to millions of people all the time, you learn a lot. So there was a woman who called me, this was years ago, she said she was a grandmother, and she's, Dennis, I give my grandchildren for their, it's either birthday or Christmas, I don't remember which. I think birthday. I give my grandchildren on their birthday something from my heart. I was thinking, what might that be? And she said, I write them a poem. And that means much more than any gift that I could give them. And I remember telling her, wrong. That's just not true. A gift would be more appreciated than your poem. That's just a fact. That's not even my opinion. We're back to facts. If you gave a poem along with a gift, that's a separate issue. It means more to you, your poem, but it doesn't mean more to them. The purpose of a present is to be meaningful to the recipient, not the giver. This is sort of elementary logic, right? If it would be like me giving a friend for his birthday a beautiful box of cigars, but he doesn't smoke. I'm choking myself up. If you give me a beautiful box of cigars, it's very meaningful because I smoke cigars. But if you give somebody who doesn't smoke cigars, even if it's the most wonderful brand, in a beautiful box, it's irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything to them. That's what matters. This notion, it's the thought that counts. Let me tell you, first of all, the thought and the amount of money are not unrelated. That's to be honest. If somebody gets you an expensive gift or a cheap gift, of course you're more moved by the expensive gift. Unless, we're not talking about a billionaire has gotten you an expensive gift to show that they're a billionaire. All right, let's talk in real life. In real life, if somebody went the extra 9 yards, or extra yard as it were, and bought you something that is relatively expensive versus something that's very cheap, of course you will appreciate the expensive thing more. That's natural. There's nothing wrong with that. This is real life. Doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you selfish. It makes you real. So that's the reality of all of this. When people, a guy called me, I did this on my radio show. And by the way, in case you don't know, a fair number of you may not know, especially younger people who don't tend to listen to radio. I have a national radio show, and I talk about what's happening in the world every day for 3 hours. So it's something you might want to look into. It's on the internet. There's an app, and there, of course, local radio stations all over America, which can be accessed all over the world. But a guy called me. He said, my wife and I make $40,000 a year, and we spend $2,000 on Christmas gifts. That's a lot of money for a person making $40,000. It is. That's 5% of his whole income is going to buying gifts. That's his gross income. So, but he said it gives us great joy. And it does. When you give a gift and you see the person light up, it's a great feeling. Why would anybody, back to my original point, why would anybody think ill of gift giving? So that's my case on its behalf. Okay, time for your Q and A. No, your Q, my A. Your questions, my answers, if in fact I have an answer for it. Matt, 22, Vienna, Georgia. Hi, Dennis. Hi, Matt. I am a Baptist, but I want to know what you think of Pope Francis changing the line in the Lord's Prayer from "lead us not into temptation" to "abandon us not abandon us not when in temptation." Let me repeat that. The Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation, just about everybody knows that. 2, abandon us not when in temptation. Since neither you or I are Catholics, thanks for taking my question. So, I have a few things to say about this. First, the truth is the change makes sense. Again, let's be real. Lead us not into temptation, as opposed to, because the Pope's argument is God is not leading you in temptation. It's a prayer to God. So, but of course, it's not an assumption that God is. It's that don't let us really into temptation. That's what the original meaning would be, I would assume. but abandon us not when in temptation is a very nice change. However, having said that, and I mean that, but having said that, I'm very wary of changing traditional prayers. Because what happens is 10 years later, somebody has a better idea. And then 10 years later, someone has a better idea. Whereas being attached to and keeping something alive that has been in existence for so long, there's something, I think, valuable in that. In my religion, Judaism, the non-Orthodox movements, called Reform and Conservative, they changed a lot of prayers. So, for example, the basic prayer said 3 times a day in Judaism includes the prayer, "Blessed are you, God." The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Right? That's not right. I'm asking you if it's right. It's cute. But anyway, that's the way it goes. It said a lot. And though they changed it, the God of Abraham and Sarah, the God of Isaac and Rebekah, the God of Jacob and Rachel and Leah. And you understand, they included the matriarchs, even though the traditional prayer had the patriarchs. So that makes sense. The matriarchs are incredibly important figures in Genesis. I know Genesis. I mean, I know my first 5 books pretty well, working on a 5-volume commentary on it called The Rational Bible. And so I understand that. I understood that change like I understand this change. It makes sense. But what happens is they keep changing because tastes keep changing. So unless nobody saying the traditional Lord's Prayer thought, "Oh God, you're responsible for my temptations." And by the way, to a certain extent, I guess God is. I mean, God made all the temptations of the world, God made. But I don't think that that's what was meant, but it doesn't matter. So the change makes sense, but unless a change is critical in religion, it's probably not a good idea. Mac, 27, Kansas. Hi, Mac. In your opinion, what's the best way to change someone's mind? Also, what is your favorite cigar? Now, those are 2 related questions. I like it. All right, we'll begin. What is the best way to change somebody's mind? Well, you have to be working with somebody who thinks rationally and for whom feelings are not primary in drawing a conclusion, in making a judgment. That's the issue. And you have to use reason. So if you use reason and they use reason, like, I'll give you a great example. Happened today on my radio show. So I had mentioned in some context that I remember the context actually. I mentioned that the West is abandoning it's not only is it abandoning religion, it is also abandoning the Enlightenment, which was secular, because there is an anti-reason movement. Leftism is telling people you go by feelings. It's like the woman who wrote once that I should have, actually wrote this in a major newspaper. Dennis Prager has no right to opine about abortion. He doesn't have a uterus. And I thought, wow, that's awesome that she really believes that. So you can only have an opinion about the worth of a human fetus if you have a uterus. By the way, she probably wouldn't say that today. This was just 5 years ago, but today having a uterus doesn't make you a woman, right? Nothing makes you a woman. Not breasts, not menstruation, not ovaries, not a vagina. It's amazing. None of it. You are what you feel. That's a perfect example. Feeling is everything. There is no objective reality, it's all feeling. So I said, we're not only rejecting the religious foundations of the West, we're rejecting the Enlightenment secular foundations because it was the age of reason. It's feelings today. So they're known as Jerusalem and Athens. From Athens, we got the logic, reason, philosophy basis, and from Jerusalem, we got the morality basis. So a guy calls me up and said, Dennis, you forgot Rome. And I said to the guy, you're 100% right. I did forget Rome, because it's absolutely right. From Rome, we got Western religion, obviously, through the Catholic Church, and Roman law. So you're absolutely right. And the guy goes, oh, that's all I had to say? I said, that's all you had to say. You were right. He cracked up. So if he's rational and I'm rational, so you asked, that's the best way to change people's minds? If you're rational and they're rational, you can do it. But if you're not rational or they're not rational, it's a lot harder. What I have found, the most effective thing that I have found is my motto, I prefer clarity to agreement. To work with somebody that you differ with and say, look, instead of arguing, let's just establish where we differ. That's very helpful, because then a person is, do I really differ, or is that really what I'm saying? That's very effective. My favorite cigar, if it's from Nicaragua and it's strong, it tends to be my favorite cigar. I am not a fan of Cuban cigars, not because Cuba is a communist country. Nicaragua is essentially a communist country too, under the Sandinistas, so it has nothing to do with politics. It's just, I think Nicaragua has surpassed it. Honduras makes great cigars, and so does Dominican Republic, but Nicaragua is my favorite. Sam, 39, Simi Valley, California. If Winston Churchill was alive today, were still alive, what would you say to him? I would say, you were a great man, sir, and this age is not appreciating you properly. And I have proof of that. What was the name of the astronaut? Scott Kelly? What was his name? The one with the space station. He's very popular. Anyway, he sent out a tweet about a month ago. He wanted Americans to come together, so he said, in victory, show magnanimity, something like that. It's a very sweet tweet. Excuse me. He said, as the great 20th century British leader Winston Churchill said, in victory, show magnanimity. And he was lambasted by the left, who hate Churchill because they said Churchill was a racist. And the point I made on the radio, it was so depressing, was everything good the left tears down, everything. Churchill is just the latest example. I didn't even know that they were tearing down Churchill. But everybody, the founders of the United States were torn down. Churchill is torn down. Religion is torn down. The Boy Scouts are torn down. The arts are torn down. Everything is torn down. It's like a giant wrecking ball to civilization from the left. Not liberals, but from the left. Churchill was a great man. I'm reading a 1,000-page biography of him right now by Andrew Roberts. And Roberts is totally honest about his flaws. Everybody has flaws. He defended the British Empire, so this is why they call him racist, and because they say that he wouldn't feed the people in West Bengal and India during their famine because they weren't white. But it was during the war, and it was very, I think it was World War I, or was it World War II? One of the two world wars. This famine. Anyway, it wasn't because of racism. Nevertheless, that's another hero. The man saved, here's the irony, the man saved the West from a racist, Hitler. And he's called a racist. and then I'd have a cigar with him. How are we doing on time? What's our story here?
5 more minutes.
Okie doke. Marlene, 34, Arlington, Tennessee. Hi, Dennis. Hi. How do you think humanity would change if all humans' life expectancy was significantly increased, let's say to around 500 years? That's a great question, and off the top of my head, I would say things would be pretty dark. It would give people a lot more time to cause trouble. That's my first reaction. They'd have so much time on their hands, they'd be bored. People want excitement, and evil is exciting. Listen, I'd like to live on and on and on. I love life. I can't tell you. I love it so much. I've always loved it. I'm having a ball. But I know that it wouldn't be good if I lived to 500. The finite number at which we're at is not bad. It's long enough to live a full life, and it's short enough to give life meaning. See, if you have 500 years, if one of the reasons I've been pretty productive, not as productive as I could be because I have a lazy streak, but I've been pretty productive. One of the reasons is I know time is limited. You see, if you know you're going to live to 500, and somebody says to you, you should really read this book. You go, well, I got another 307 years. I'll check into it then. But if you have to do something, meaningful, you have to do it now, because you don't have so much time. So that's why death gives life meaning. I can't stand death, but it does give life meaning. It's not here forever. You better use it wisely. So I don't pray for 500 years for people. Noah, 17, Irvine, California. Hi there. Hi there, Noah. What's your opinion of the growing abandonment of the church, and how do we fix it? I think it's a tragedy. This is a Jew saying the dechristianization of the West is a tragedy. Okay, and I'm totally aware of the flaws of Christianity in history. I'm totally aware of it. I wrote a book on anti-Semitism, is a huge chapter on Christian anti-Semitism. Nevertheless, we're doomed without it in the West. How to fix it? Religious people have to understand how to make the case for the indispensability of the Bible and religion. That's what I'm trying to do with the Rational Bible. And if you read the reviews on Amazon, I have done it with a lot of people. They've entered as an agnostic or atheist, and then leave with at least an understanding of the importance of God and the Judeo-Christian religions that have developed from the Bible. But the problem is, people don't know how to make the case for good stuff. People are more eloquent in destructive ideologies than they are in constructive ideologies. I guess it's easier to be eloquent on behalf of bad than eloquent on behalf of good. I'm not exactly sure why. I have theories on it. Maybe I'll take it up another time. So anyway, with all of those thoughts, reminding you, it's nice to buy gifts for people you love, and it's nice to receive gifts from people you love. I can't imagine anybody arguing against that basic point of life. I'm Dennis Prager, and let me think. Oh yeah, you know what? I should say that. I should add, a nice gift is my book, The Rational Bible. I don't push my stuff much at all. But that's meaningful, and it's beautifully bound and printed. It's a beautiful gift. That, and of course, if you want to give a donation to Prager University so we can keep all of this stuff free, all of our videos, that would be nice too. In any event, I'll see you next week. Thanks for being with me.